Hi, this is Mrs. Rodriguez with another lesson video. Today's lesson video is going over the Chapter 2 practice test. Now remember, the real test is going to be exactly like the practice test. I just changed the names and numbers. So if you do well on this practice test, you should do well on the test. Okay, so number one, what's the scale for the number line below? Okay, so we have a number line, we have 32 and we have 64, and we have to figure out what the scale is. Now by scale, we have to know how much those ticks are going up each time, okay? How we went from 32 and then 3 ticks and then 64 and so on. And the way we do that is first you find the difference between the two numbers. So you subtract, so 64 minus 32, and you end up with 32. Then you count the number of spaces between the 32 and 64. And by spaces, I don't mean the ticks, I mean the spaces in between. So 1, 2, 3, 4. There are 4 spaces between 32 and 64. So we take our difference and we divide it by the number of spaces. So it's going to be 32 divided by 4, and our answer is 8. So that means each tick mark goes up 8 times. Each time. It goes up 8 each time. So our answer is 8. Now, for number 2, it says, what number on the scale is X? So notice it's the same number line as number 1, but instead of finding out how much the tick marks are going up by, they want to now know, okay, what this number is. Well, in number 1, we saw that the scale, it goes up 8 each time. So if I have 64, 64 plus 8 is going to be 72. And 72 plus 8 is going to be 80. So our answer is 80. All right, number 3, I have 6 blue tiles, 4 green tiles, 9 yellow tiles, and 3 red tiles in a bag. I shake the bag, reach in, and pull out a tile at random. What's the probability that the tile will be yellow? All right, so the first thing we want to do is count up how many total tiles we have. Okay, so we have 6 blue, plus 4 green, that's 10, plus 9 yellow, that's 19, and then 19 plus 3 red, which gives us 22, okay? And how many of those will be yellow is the question, is what the question is asking. So there are 9 yellow out of 22 total marbles, so that means our answer is going to be 9 out of 22. Okay, 9 yellow out of 22 total marbles. Fill in the table to show the different forms of each number. So for number 4, you're going to see a box like this with 3 columns, fraction, decimal, and percent, with some of the parts missing. And it's your job to fill in those missing parts. For the first one, we have 4/5 as the fraction. So I would need to find 4/5 in the decimal and percent form. And remember, that fraction bar also means to divide. So what I need to do is see how many times 5 goes into 4. It doesn't, so I add a decimal, so I can add a 0. 5 goes into 40 8 times, and that is 40 with no remainder. So that means my decimal version of 4/5 is 0.8. If I want to get my percent, then I know I need to move this decimal over 2 times. So I have 0.8, and then I'm going to move the decimal over 2 times. 1, 2, and I end up with 80%. Okay? So let me go ahead, and I'm going to move this over here. All right, now we have the second one. We have the decimal form of 0.07, and we need to find that in fraction form and in percent form. Well, we just said that you move the decimal over 2 places to the right to get the percent. So in this case, this would be 7%. And then the fraction, well, we remember that percent means out of 100. So this would be 7 over 100. Okay. And then last but not least, we have 10%. To go from percent to fraction, well, we know whatever that number is for the percent, that's the number that goes over 100 in fraction form. So this is going to be 10 over 100. But we can simplify that and get 1 out of 10. So that's actually our answer. Because remember, on the test, you are expected to simplify everything. So we have our fraction, we have our percent. Now to go from percent to decimal, I could either divide how many times 10 goes into 1, or I can remember that the decimal goes backwards and it would be in front of the 1. So in this case, this is my decimal, 0.1. Okay, or you could have seen how many times 10 goes into 1. It doesn't, so I add my decimal to add a 0. 10 goes into 10 one time. You get 10, you subtract 0 remainder, your answer is 0.1. The choice is up to you. All right, moving on. Number 5, will the decimal form of 17 over 20 repeat or terminate? So in this one, we need to remember that terminating decimals have an end, right? Like 1/2 is 0.5 and then it stops at the 5 on its own. Repeating decimals are decimals where the remainder never ends. It just keeps repeating over and over and over again. So in order to see if this is a repeating or terminating decimal, once again, remember that that fraction bar also means to divide. Let me change colors. So I need to see, what is 20 into 17? Well, it can't go into 17. So I add my decimal, so I can add a 0. Now, 170 divided by 20 is 8. Okay, and that gives me 1600. We end up a remainder of 10. I drop down another 0. 20 goes into 10 5 times, and we get 100. So we subtract the 100 from 100, we get a 0 remainder. So this becomes 0.85, and it stops at the 5. Nothing repeats. So that means this is a terminating decimal. Okay. All right, number 6. Aaron had the pile of tiles shown at right. What is the value of their tiles? So for this one, you have to remember that the positive and negative represent +1, and the negative represents a -1. And you also have to remember that 1 plus a -1 equals 0. Okay? And we know this because if I were to draw a number line, here's 1, here's 0. If I add a -1, it makes me go to the right 1 space, and I end up at 0, right? Okay. Now, knowing this, that means that 1 positive integer tile and 1 negative integer tile equals 0. So what you need to do is cancel a negative with a positive until you can't anymore and see what you have left. So 1 negative and 1 positive cancels each other out. So here we go. So here's 1 negative with 1 positive. Here's another pair, another pair, another pair. And you see what you have left. And in this case, I have -3 left over. So that is my answer. Okay, here are my leftover tiles. And that is my answer, -3. Because there's 3 negatives. All right, for 7, below is a table of data that Susie's 2 moms collected while watching her soccer game last week. Plot the data from the table on the grid below. So this is like the project you guys are working on in class this week. It's all about the graphing. So remember, your first number is your X, your second number is your Y. Okay, the Y is the axis that goes up and down. Your X is the axis that goes side to side. So what you want to do is you want to find your X and your Y, follow the lines and see where they meet. So if X is 6, that's here, and if Y is 2, that's here, and I follow the lines until I find my answer. And my dot goes right there, okay? So here is my 6 and 2. All right, the next one, the X is now a -9, so I find my -9. My Y is +4, so I find my Y, that's 4, and I follow the two lines until they meet. Now, I'm showing these dash marks to show you how I'm finding where my dots are, but you do not put this in the graph. And in fact, the program won't let you. The program will only let you put in the dots, which is good, because I don't want anybody getting confused. So here's my -9, +4. Okay, the next one is -7 and -8. So I find my -7 for X, my -8 for Y. I follow to see where they meet, and they meet right here. Okay, and we are not connecting these dots. Do not connect the dots in the program, because that's not the purpose of this. We're just plotting points. We're not connecting dots. There is no mystery image you're supposed to see. You're just plotting points, okay? And then last but not least, we have 10 and -5. We see where those meet, and our dot goes here, okay? So your graph should look something like this. Instead of the coordinates, I believe the program's going to say A, B, C, and D. But this is what it should look like. Okay, you're just plotting the points. All right, moving on. 8. What are the perimeter and area of this shape? Okay, so this shape is an odd shape. We don't get any units, so these are unit squares, which means we're just going to call the units units. For perimeter, remember that's the outside part. You want to count how many side pieces make up the outside of this shape. So we have 1, and this would be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18. So 18 units make up the outside part of this shape. Now, for the area, remember the perimeter is the outside. That means the area is the inside. So all we have to do is count the squares. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So our area is 9 units squared. All right. So the practice test and the real test only have 10 questions. So here we are already on the second to last problem. What is the product of? Now remember, product and of means you need to multiply. Okay, it means to multiply. And if you'll notice, not only are we multiplying, but we have absolute value bars. Don't forget those absolute value bars. So let's take it one step at a time. Remember, we have to do the inside of the absolute value bars first. We have to do the inside, just like with parentheses. And then whatever our answer is, we take the absolute value of it. So we have in the inside -1/4 times 2/6. Now, you could just multiply across, and you would get -2/24. And then you could simplify that to -1/12. Or another way you could have done it is you could have cross-simplified. 6 and 1 don't simplify, but 2 goes into 2 one time, 2 goes into 4 2 times, and you would get 1 times 1, which is 1 and 2 times 6, which is 12, and it would jump you down automatically to the answer. So this means that this equals the absolute value of negative 1/12. An absolute value, remember, is the distance from 0. And distance is never negative. Okay? It's never negative. So that means whatever our answer is, we're going to write the positive version of it. So my answer for this problem is going to be 1/12 because the absolute value of negative 1/12 is positive 1/12. Okay? And then last but not least, find the value of negative 60 plus 8. So we have to remember our rules for adding integers. Okay? So they are different signs. So that means we subtract and use the sign of the bigger number. Okay, just like if they were the same sign, you would add them together and keep the sign. Different signs, you subtract and take the sign of the bigger number. So you do have to remember those rules because you're not sure what you're going to get on the test, okay? It might be both the same sign or they might both have different signs. So you need to know the rules. These are different signs because that 60 is negative, but that 8 is positive. So we are going to subtract. We have 60 minus 8, okay? And you get 52. Then you use the sign of the bigger number. 60 is the bigger number. And 60 is negative, so my answer is going to equal negative 52. Okay, and that's the answer for number 10. All right, so hopefully this walkthrough through the practice test helps you guys out. Remember, you can always ask me for help or questions if you need to. And make sure you study this really well because remember, the test is going to be exactly like this. I'm just going to change the numbers and the names. So if you can do well here, you will do well on the test. So study, study, study. Okay? And as always, I hope you guys have a great day. Bye.